Welcome to the Innovation and Compliance Podcast, part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Join us every week as we talk with industry innovators who are making compliance to help business run more efficiently and at the end of the day, more profitably. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today I have with me Paul Brodie. Paul is the CEO of Brodie Consulting. And not only does he do consulting, he does keynote speaking. And most interestingly, he helps people get books published. And as listeners of this podcast know, I am passionate about book publishing and book reading. And so I asked Paul if he could take time to visit with us today, a little bit about his professional background, how he came to form Brodie Consulting Group, and what he's up to these days. So, Paul, with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
So, Paul, I was wondering if you could detail for us your journey, because I think it's been an interesting one to get to the Brodie Consulting Group.
Yeah, so what happened was around 8 years ago, May 2011, had a health crisis. I was right near 340 pounds, borderline type 2 diabetes, borderline high blood pressure, you name it, I was a mess. Doctor took a look at me, did the labs, checked everything out, and he said, you know what? If you don't get your act together, you'll be dead in 5 years. So when someone says that to you, it tends to get your attention. So long story short, lost 60 pounds. I've kept the weight off over the last 8 years now. And the main thing is I was able to do what only 5% of this population can, and that is to actually lose the weight and most importantly, keep the weight off. So what I wanted to do was write about that journey. Wanted to write about the struggles, wanted to write about the triumphs, but the main thing was to really have an unfiltered look about this journey. But of course, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to get a book published. And of course, what happened was Kindle came out and people started to publish their own books. And I had a couple of friends that published a book, went really well for them. I'm on a flight to Vegas. This is about 4 years later. And I'm thinking, why do I keep putting this book off? So long story short, the next morning at the Mirage by the pool, I actually typed out the entire outline of that first book, which ended up becoming Eat Less and Move More. And it was the first of 15 books that I've had the pleasure to share with the world. But the problem is when I had that outline done, a week later, still inspired, wrote over 20,000 words, was ready to get it published. But of course, I had no idea what I was doing. I did a ton of research. So I had to figure out, okay, I need an editor. I need a formatter, book cover designer. I need to learn how to get this book on Amazon. Long story short, a month later, we figured it out. But I spent half of those days learning about publishing and the second half of all those days of learning about marketing, because I knew really quickly that if we didn't do this right, then it was going to fall into the Amazon.com rainforest. So published the book, marketed it, August 2015, became my first bestseller. And then you're asking about doing the keynotes and speaking and everything. So my second and third books were based off of motivational seminars that I've given since 2005. One was called Motivation 101. The other one was called Positivity Attracts. And what happened was those books also became bestseller number 2, bestseller number 3. And then what happened was, and this is how Brodie Consulting was formed, was I started to have readers and fellow authors reach out and go, wow, you've had 3 bestsellers in the last 4 to 5 months. Could you help me share my story? Could you help me get published? Could you help me market my book? And I'm thinking, yeah, I can totally do that. I was still teaching at the time and taught special needs. And I was working during the day and I was coaching and helping clients during the evenings. Long story short, I was probably doing about 80 hours a week, but it was well worth it because what happened was a year and a half later, June 2017, I left that teaching position and became a full-time publisher. And then what happened from that point, we expanded out from coaching to done-for-you book publishing services, done-for-you book launch marketing services, and executive ghostwriting. Because what we learned was, yes, there were some people that like to be coached, but most people, especially business owners, speakers, coaches, consultants, they want us to do the legwork for them. We'll help them get the book completed. But from that point, we're doing the publishing, the editing, book cover design, but most importantly, the marketing to make sure that that book can be successful. So that is essentially how this all started, was a health crisis 8 years ago.
So that's a fascinating story. And It's a little bit similar to mine. I had a health crisis, but it was brought on by a bicycle Hummer event where I was the bicycle. First of all, and probably the most important thing I did not acknowledge in the introduction is you probably have ascertained from Paul's comments, he's a fellow Texan. So we rarely get Texans on this podcast, so we always have to acknowledge our fellow Texans. But Paul, one of the things that really struck me about your process in helping companies, individuals, and persons get books published is you actually have a process. And so I was wondering if you just might detail for us the 6-step process, because I found it to be an incredibly useful process for a wide variety of projects, obviously including book publishing, but just how someone would work with you through the 6-step process.
Well, that's one of the biggest things. You have to realize that you need processes, you need systems, you need to be able to work with people like yourself or like myself that have that proven system. So in regards to our 6-step process, the first thing that we do is we want to have a strategy session with a member of our team. And what happens is we're basically finding out how can we help, what's going on. It's no pitch. We only want to know one main thing, and that is to tell us about the book. It's not a sales call. We just want to know how we can help. What happens is, should that call go well, then I would typically hop on a second strategy session with them as the next step in the process. And that is, most importantly, is to figure out collaboratively the best experience that's going to fit their needs. And whether that's going to be coaching or whether that's going to be use services, book publishing, book launch marketing, ghostwriting, even podcast production. During the call, we just cover every option more thoroughly because we do have a holistic approach. We want to make sure that it's going to be what's best for the client and also it's going to be the best fit for us. The third step in regards to that process is then the work begins, right? So we will typically get started in 1 week of our agreement. We cover the entire process, timelines, with getting the book published, and then also just going through every step of that process. So as you know, with publishing, it's getting a draft submitted, then it's edited, then formatted, then from that point also getting the book cover created. So getting that book ready and making sure it's ready to go. And the whole point of this is it is a collaborative process. So whether it's through our coaching, whether it's through our publishing, that's the main thing because our goal is to get it done. We want to make sure that they're making significant progress within the first couple of months. Our goal is to have that book from draft to out there in the world within 3 months. But of course, that depends on the client too, just to make sure it's the best fit. We've had books published within 2 months, or we've taken as much as a year. It just has to be what's going to be the best fit for the client. So going through that process, getting it done, and then the finish line, realizing, okay, now we're ready to take this book to the next level. Let's get it on Amazon. Let's get this book marketed for you if that's what you need. But the main thing is that they have a process throughout the entire journey. I think that's the most important thing because we've done this now for over 4 years. We do have a proven system. It's one of those things where it's not a tagline, it's not a gimmick, it's an outcome. And it's just making sure that we get clients to buy in to our process.
So, Paul, in addition to your consulting, and you just hinted at this, but another thing you provide is keynote speaking and seminars. So I wondered if I could turn to that a little bit. A large part of my audience is concerned with leadership. They're business professionals, compliance professionals, perhaps in a corporate legal department. And so I was wondering if you could talk about the leadership keynotes and seminars you put on and how you help people work through those issues.
So we work mainly with either college campuses or organizations. And one of the biggest challenges that we've noticed is people struggle with motivation and with having a positive mindset. So we have a couple seminars based on those. One is called Motivation 101, where essentially we're talking for around an hour about self-motivation, but also team motivation and organizational motivation. We're talking about some of the challenges with those issues and some of the solutions that we can come into. Because that's one of the biggest things is you have to be motivated. You have to be fired up and be able to do what you love to do. And that's a challenge, especially with organizations, because there are issues out there. And one of the main things that we talk about too in regards to leadership, at the end of the day, the best way to lead is by example and by being positive and by having open communication and not just relying to emails. Actually having face-to-face communication, having one-on-ones. I feel one of the biggest challenges that we have, whether it's organizations, whether it's colleges, is having that face-to-face communication and making things personal. I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now, especially with technology. It's so easy to stare at a phone all day or stare at a computer, but let's have those human interactions and truly make connections.
So you mentioned a couple of times your work at universities. I was wondering what attracts you to working with university students, or why do you just seem to fit into that niche?
I was a teacher for 9 years, and I always believe it's all about youth. It's all about the future of our country and around the world too. It is about the future and making sure those kids are clear with where they want to go in life. Because, when we're in college, did we know what we're going to do? Did we know some of our main goals? Because some of those things change really quickly, especially during your college time, where you got to figure out what's going to be the best fit for you and then going down that path. Because not everyone wants to go into the corporate world. People might want to go into education, or they might want to go into nonprofits, or they might want to start their own business. So it's helping people get clear on their mission going forward, so not only for themselves, but also for the future.
Also, I was intrigued by your positive mental attitude, or PMA, seminar. Could you just detail that a little bit for us?
So it's a concept that's completely changed my life. It's called PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. It was a book many years ago by Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone. And the reason I share that story is because W. Clement Stone was also the founder of Combined Insurance, where both of my parents worked. I had the pleasure to meet Mr. Stone, truly amazing man. And he always believed the power of having PMA, having a positive mental attitude, and talking about how mindset is everything, how you start your day, how you keep your day going, the momentum. So what I ended up doing a few years ago is I actually wrote a book about positive mental attitude, which talks a little bit more about those experiences, having the pleasure to meet Mr. Stone and living by that mindset ever since I was roughly 5 years old. So literally without Mr. Stone, I wouldn't be in Texas because my parents transferred from England because they were both insurance executives, moved over to Texas. They were in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana territories. So it's just an amazing thing how one man can have that level of impact.
Well, I'd like to turn now to your blogging and your podcasting. And I have to start with the following blog, which is entitled My Favorite Season. And if it wasn't written by a Texan, it shouldn't have been written, because you correctly detail there are 5 seasons in a year: winter, spring, summer, football, fall, and football. So I'm glad that somebody else feels that way about that. But now I'd like to turn to your podcast, because that's how we met, and ask you, how do you use your podcast? I was going to say in your business, but just how do you use your podcast?
The main thing is building connections and building relationships. That's the number one thing, is connecting with our guests. Thursday of last week, we completed our 400th episode. And this is since we started the show back in June of 2018. So roughly in 15, 16 months now, we have had the opportunity to interview 400 amazing people about their journey. So building relationships with them. I think this is a good example. We connected last week and you invited me to be on your podcast this week. So it's really about building relationships, building connections. But the best part is that with the format of our show, each episode is usually around 10 to 15 minutes. It's direct. It's to the point. I always joke around. I call it short attention span theater, just because people have short attention spans these days. They want something that they can digest quickly. So that's our philosophy. It's a 10 to 15 minute podcast. People can listen to it. It's high value. It's not a host, talking about themselves all day. It's just getting in there, getting on with it, and making it about the guest. And the best thing is they share some great advice in regards to the writing portion of your book, the publishing part, and the marketing part, but then also sharing their favorite book and their favorite quote. So it's high value, it's to the point, and it's a lot of fun. I had an absolute pleasure having you on the show last week. We had a lot of fun on our interview.
Well, thank you. We really did. Paul, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time, but I was wondering if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you or find out more about the Brodie Consulting Group, how would they do so?
So the best thing to do would be to go to our website, which is getpublishedsystem.com. You can also go to getpublishedpodcast.com. We do have a free electronic book on there called Get Published. You can check out our podcast. I recently did a TV interview. So there's a 10-minute TV interview that really kind of goes into the importance of sharing your story, and most importantly, how other people can share their story and truly change their life. And you get more information about our services. But yeah, just check out getpublishedpodcast.com or getpublishedsystem.com. We'd love to connect. We also do a complimentary strategy session. So if you are looking for additional support, then we'd love to talk potentially with you about that.
Well, Paul, this has just been a fascinating interview. I'm greatly looking forward to continuing this conversation going forward.
All right, Tom, thank you again for the opportunity today.
If you're a compliance professional looking for a convenient and effective way to fulfill your continuing education requirements, go to fcpacompliancereport.com/courses and choose from 4 hour-long training packages that will keep you current. That's fcpacompliancereport.com/courses.